Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, welcome to the session on advanced materials. As a convener of this session, thanks to the organizers for having this special session on advanced materials and giving me and Professor Vairappa to convene this session. In this presentation, I am going to talk about advanced materials for sustainable development. In fact, talking about materials might appear superfluous in the sense even human civilizations are named after materials, whether it is a Stone Age, bronze, copper, iron, silicon, and whatnot. And we use the materials day in and day out. In fact, our life probably revolves around the materials. But however, using the materials in excess have been causing lots of problems, and people have been doing research on developing the materials, more and more new materials, finding the technologies that are based on these materials. But now, in today's world, we are not talking about just materials. We are now more worried about sustainable development. In fact, we have heard Prime Minister and many others using the words sustainable development. But in this presentation, I am going to talk about the role of materials and in particular, the material scientists in the sustainable development. Now, first of all, let us define the sustainable development. There is no unique definition. In fact, I would say it is a controversial and nobody knows exactly what we are looking in terms of the definition of the sustainable development. But I can take one definition probably here. Development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. This definition assumes two things. One, the present generation knows the needs of the future generation, which is always a questionable. We do not know really how the development takes place, what will happen tomorrow, what more requirements are there. So effectively, this is going to be really a questionable one. Another one, we assume that the needs remain constant, that is, remain same forever, which is again not true. They keep changing. But however, taking note of these two aspects, we will accept this definition for the acceptance sake and look at our aspect, our definite important topic, what is referred as the sustainable development. And in today's world, we are facing lots of problems, as you all know. There is a dramatic increase in the global population. And of course, this increase in the global population is causing energy requirement more and more. And there is increase in the burning for the fossil fuels to support the energy needs of this growing population. And of course, there is an increased emission of the CO2, carbon dioxide, during the last 250 years after this industrial revolution. In fact, what was not done in about 250 million years, the present generation has done it, emitting the CO2. Now, another important point, we also need to know that the materials are the technology enablers. Without materials, there would have been no information age without silicon, and there would have been no mobile phones without functional ceramics. There would have been no aviation industry if high-strength aluminum alloys do not exist. There would have been no skyscrapers without steel girders. and no direct conversion of the solar power to electricity if photovoltaic materials did not exist and were not efficient and manufacturable. So this is the obviously to say that materials are very, very important. They are the technology enablers, and you can imagine the life without mobile phones, without materials. But the end users never recognizes that. Today in automobile industry, if you take today's car, of course you know you are using light materials, high strength materials, and there's a lot of interconnectors and high energy batteries and so on. But end user doesn't care about it. But there is a need to really educate the end user. And material science plays a major role in manufacturing the materials and products, transportation, infrastructure, energy, water resources, and education. And there is also a connection between sustainable development and material science. The immediate and direct connections between sustainable development and material science include efficient use of materials. This requires conservation of the materials. Normally, we are expected to save the material and use it and leave it for the future generation, but we don't do it. And we also require to substitute the materials what we are currently using with probably less expensive, more environment friendly, less toxic, and so on. We need to reuse the material. We need to repurpose the material. We also need to recycle the material. This is most important. In other words, the efficient use of materials plays a very important role. Then, of course, we also have to look at the materials cycle life assessment. That is, what is that we are giving input? What is the output? Input of the raw materials and energy sources have to be taken into account. And what is the output? Air emissions, are they environmental friendly? Water emissions, are they environmental friendly? And what about the solid waste? How do we recover, reuse, and all these things going to be the important aspect if we have to have the sustainable development. Of course, replacement of the materials, and some materials are very scarce, so we need to really find a way out. We need to look at the economics of the materials. We need to make them cheaper and cheaper. And another aspect is energy. Materials we require to support alternate technologies, to mitigate the problems with fossil fuel technologies, and to increase energy efficiency. And of course, the mitigation of the undesirable environmental impacts from technology and economic growth. That is like corrosion, pollution, toxic waste, etc. Water purification is another important aspect. So the greatest challenge in putting all these into practice is the changing the human behavior. We have to really educate the human beings, bring them the greater awareness of the problems that are associated today with this excessive use of the material. And technology alone is not going to answer the problems. Governments, policymakers, scientists, technologists will have to develop national and global practices. Now, what are the current challenges? There are infinite number of challenges. But let us look at the top 10 global issues that are facing the 21st century. Energy shortage, water shortage, food shortage, pollution, excess population, healthcare issues, security, poverty, education, lack of education, and deforestation, urbanization. All these are the issues that are of great importance in today's world. Now, most of these challenges are also interrelated. They are not independent of each other. Suppose we consider the increase in the population. Of course, there is increase in the energy consumption. There is increase in the greenhouse gases. It has an effect on the climate and environment. And increase in the material consumption. Of course, we are using a lot of packaging materials, and we are throwing away, increasing the solid waste, and which requires recycling. And material-centric issues critical for sustainable future are energy, transportation, housing, materials resources, and health. These challenges offer a vista of opportunities for the next generation of the material science and engineering community. Now, thinking of the energy, increase in efficiency of usage, especially in housing and building and in industrial sector, is very, very important. Shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources which generate much lower levels of the green gases is important. Renewable sources of energy such as hydroelectricity, biofuels, and geothermal energy will not be sufficient to meet the energy consumption needs of the future world. Solar power, biofuels, wind power are important resources. Nanostructured materials and advanced photovoltaic materials such as nanocrystalline, silicon synfilms, and novel chalcogenides are possibilities. Transportation, of course, the electric car is right now the dream. It is available, but it's not affordable yet. So, whether it is electric vehicles or hybrid electric vehicles, plug-in electric vehicles, and so on, this is going to be the future. Of course, we require lightweight, structural materials, alloy development and processing is going to be the order of the day. Housing, environmentally benign, energy efficient, and affordable construction materials is going to be the way. And materials resources, materials waste is normally either burned, emitting pollutants, or deposited in landfills, introducing toxic substances to groundwater and soil. That is to be avoided. Materials contained in discarded objects are unavailable for further productive use. Materials need to be fully recyclable and biodegradable. Remanufacturing of the components from spent products to the new products is needed. Now, talking about health, increased use of biomaterials, implantable and medical devices, and tissue engineering have contributed to the expectancy of the life. Now, coming to the role of the material scientists, obviously they have to take stock of the economic, social, and environmental challenges for sustainable development and avail the opportunities to research and innovation. Now, what is the role of the material science? Instead of the materials, now I am shifting to the material scientists and engineers. I start with the Native American proverb, "This land is borrowed from our children." In other words, we are not the owners of this land, we don't own it, we are only the managers of the land, we are only the stewards of the land, we have a role to play. So, now we are all got trapped into the so-called progress trap, and which created the built environment, in times overwhelmed the natural environment, and it has resulted in the collapse of the several civilizations. And of course, the global warming is taking place, and there is a severe warning in front of us, and warming of the climate system is unequivocal. And since 1950s, many of the observed challenges are unprecedented over decades of millennia. The atmosphere and ocean have warmed, snow and ice have diminished, sea level has risen, and there is a concentration of the greenhouse gases increase. Now, what is that happening? That means we are failing in our stewardship. The man-made global ecological crisis is on the horizon, and society should embrace so-called green economy, which is pro-growth and pro-prosperity, and which seeks to balance the natural and built environment. What is the green economy? In contrast to the current brown economy, dependence of the economic growth on photochemicals such as coal, petroleum, natural gas, the usage of which leads to the release of the gas amounts, the great amounts of the CO2 and soot, causing environmental pollution. What about the green economy? We need to achieve highest economic production together with a minimum of emissions as well as less resources and consumption and environmental costs, and we need to recycle the natural resources. So we need to move from the current brown economy to the green economy. And how we are going to do? We have to bring the greater awareness of the crisis ahead through education. That's where the material scientists and educators are going to play an important role. We have to change our lifestyle, such as work, live, and play, and we have to develop the technology to support the new lifestyle. All of us have a great role to play. And the human factor is going to be very, very important. Again, I take a Chinese proverb which says, it is easier to move rivers and mountains than to change the person's basic nature. I'm sure there is something similar, even Indian proverb. We know that American landed the man on the moon more than 4 decades ago, but rebuilding its inner cities still remains a challenge. Now, I will also quote two deep thinkers about this human nature. Problems cannot be solved by the level of awareness that created. A new type of thinking is needed if mankind has to survive and move towards higher levels. Albert Einstein, 1940. Till now, man has been against nature, which is true, and now he will be up against his own nature. Nobel laureate Dennis Gabriel, 1963. So essentially, we need to change our lifestyle. Embracing a green lifestyle is key to revitalizing the natural environment. How are we going to do it? Lifestyle change requires 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle the materials. And sustainable urban, working, living, and playing. Sustainable technologies such as smart buildings and transportation is needed. If you look at the examples of the lifestyle, for example, energy consumption, if you walk, you are going to spend less. If you cycle, you are going to spend less. If you use mass rapid transit system, public system, you are going to spend less. Of course, the long distances, you still need car and plane, so you have to find a way out. And so attaining the green lifestyle requires the change in the human behavior and education as a powerful agent to include. We have to educate the educators, we have to educate the students, we have to educate the public. Of course, more than that, we have to educate the policymakers and government. So this is something what is required. So which essentially means we require a new paradigm for holistic education. Normally, those of you who are material scientists will talk about the structure, property, application. But today what we require is, in addition to that, we need economic aspect, we need ecological impact, so as to engineer the built environment that complements the natural environment. That is something needed in tomorrow's or today's education. Now, if you look at the CO2 emission, that is what we are talking about, global warming and so on. Of course, if you are using the wind power or solar power, or the CO2 emission is much less compared to what we are, if we use the coal or gas, that's what we are doing today. Now, the research on the green technology, there are many, many aspects. I am not going to dwell into any of those things, although my interest lies in this energy storage. So we do talk about solar energy, energy materials, building materials, renewable and sustainable materials. Now, for sustainable development, society needs to embrace post-industrial age values and practices of the green economy that needs inclusive growth and prosperity and environmental conservation, leading to sustainable development. But in a nutshell, what is sustainable development? And who are the stewards? We are the stewards, we are the managers, we are the one who have to manage the whole thing. The stewardship of the land embraces the notion of the sustainability. To fulfill stewardship, society has to safeguard and the harmony between the natural environment and built environment. That is what is most important. We shouldn't be too greedy, and we shouldn't be using all the materials that are available today and leave nothing for tomorrow's generation. Sustainability rests on the foundation of us who are the managers of the today's world. Now, of course, what is the way ahead? The journey towards fulfilling the stewardship is a long one, but we have to make the beginning today. A journey of the 1,000 miles begins with the first step. We have to make the step. We are here that has to take this as our responsibility and do it. What is the first step? Education, research, and innovation. Let us embrace new paradigm that is move from the current brown economy to the future green economy and do the research and innovation needed and educate everyone concerned. That is the most important point. It is not that I live in my house and throw the rubbish out of my compound wall and it is the role of the government to clean it. We have to make a role in this every aspect. In fact, we have to really, that is something which we need to cultivate from the childhood. It doesn't come one day. It doesn't come one day. We as a parents, grandparents, educators have a role to play. We have to educate. In fact, I can see when my grandchildren arrive in an airport, for first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, they are all right. They behave as where they are, they come from. And they look for throwing the garbage. They can't find something immediately. They become restless and somewhere they become the fellow Indians and throw the garbage. So where is the problem? We have not educated the public. We have not provided the adequate facilities. We have to do the government has a role to play. We as a parents, educators also have a role to play. So in conclusion, every human endeavor is affected by the ramifications of the sustainable development because none of our material resources are infinite. If we continue to use, if we do not recycle, if we do not get into the habit of using less and less, suppose if you take a smartphone, today's smartphone, at least there are 50 elements from the periodic table that are there. And if you throw away the smartphone, and there is no the plan to recover all these materials, to recover the smartphone, and to reuse this phone or to recycle these materials and so on, we are going to be in trouble. Only the alternate energy sources like solar, wind, hydro, tidal, and geothermal are sustainable. So we need to look for the sustainable alternatives. Sustainable development is a huge field, and nobody knows the 100% definition, but however, everybody talks about the sustainable development, and it captures the concepts of the environmental stewardship, that is how to manage the environment, and materials management, how to recycle, reuse, and so on, and green manufacturing, when you use, develop, don't pollute the environment, of course, renewable and clean energy technologies, and water and air management, they all come under one tent. So it is this one that is going to be adopted, it should be adopted by the future generation. It doesn't mean the present generation should not do, and present generation has to set pace for the future generation and make sure that we don't run out the materials. We do ensure that the future generation survive and whatever the requirements they have, they will meet. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention.